Hello and welcome to Grey Hat Beard Princess, show 68. I am the Grey of Grey Hat Beard Princess. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the head of practice from one workplace at CPS and an M365 apps and services MVP.
And my name's Al Eardley, and I'm the Hat, and I work at Microsoft as a technical architect.
Hi there, my name is Louisa. I'm an M365 and Power Platform consultant based in Germany, and I'm a dual MVP for M365 development and business applications.
And we are joined by a guest, as those on video can see. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Mancini. I am a principal architect at Simpraxis Consulting. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services, and I'm part of the Patterns and Practices team. I'm a co-maintainer of Microsoft Community Docs.
Fantastic. I forgot about that bit as well. So Emily's going to join about us, and in part 2, we're going to have some lovely chat about Yammer and Teams, which I know will trigger a lot of people. I'm looking forward to having that chat and winding people up and teaching people that Yammer is actually awesome and don't care what people say. But part 1, we're going to cover a little bit of news and things on there. I should say now, where did I put it? I've lost my Halloween. It is Halloween in the UK, so I forgot to mention this earlier. Please do ignore any pink bits there. I decided earlier that I needed to dress up for trick-or-treating, and just as I was squirting fake blood into my grey hair, it suddenly occurred to me I was recording a little bit later, which was, really, really stupid timing on there.
So I would say please do not ignore those pink bits and pieces here over there because they are here on purpose.
I think you should have kept the blood in your hair.
I did consider it. I was going to wear the arrow, and I've lost it somewhere now. So if that appears later, it may suddenly get slipped on in the middle of trying to change the conversation. Yeah, exactly. I did consider wearing hat, Al, but I didn't want to tread in your terrain there. So let's get started with the latest news. And I was going to say, Louise, you saw some lovely news about Power Apps, but I think we're dropping you in it slightly here because there was news around the Power Apps feature update.
Well. So, of course, we have the October 2022 feature update in the Power Apps blog, and there's just like a lot to discover. Some of that is more exciting than other things. So what I like, of course, and I think the first 2 items are for me the most interesting ones. So first, the test engine. They open sourced automated testing for a Canvas application. So yes, right now there is a test suite inside of the portal, but I don't know anyone who's using that, including me. So everyone is just like either building their own thing or just like not testing at all, which is of course an issue because then you will just like be notified by users what does not work if you're lucky, or it just like leads to bugs that are just like still unresolved, which is not good. And second thing is support of dynamic user membership groups in Dataverse groups teams. So that is just like huge as well. A lot of
sorry, Louise, that second one, what is it meant by that without dropping you in it, or anyone else would might know? Is this about if you've got an app and you're deploying that to teams?
What we can do is so we can leverage business rules to manage group memberships. That is of course a huge thing if we talk about Dataverse as well, because we want to restrict people from accessing data that they should not have access to. And with dynamic group memberships, we can just like do this in a more granular way. So we can leverage this now, but I did not get my hands on this yet, but pretty excited about this announcement already.
No, it certainly sounds intriguing. I've been doing a little bit of Dataverse, which I haven't touched that much of, but been trying to rework my Where on Earth bot to be a Power Platform one and get that released out there. And it's fair to say that the Azure AD side has caused me a few headaches on there. So I will be very
well, it is a flow code. How hard can it be, right?
There's a good exam out. There's a good exam out there on identity, Kev. You could always do the identity and access exam.
No, I love exams. I always enjoy doing exams.
Yeah, to be taken away from the exams part. I mean, I think the dynamic groups is something that's been promoted quite a lot as being a very powerful way to actually manage who has access to what and tie it into things like entitlements and things. So being able to actually integrate that into Dataverse just kind of brings that whole capability together, so that you can actually then say, I have access to an HR app because I actually am in HR, and that's coming through and dynamically putting me in that group. So I think it's a very powerful tool to actually say we can actually integrate that into Dataverse as well.
Yeah, because what we did not want to do is manually assigning people to apps, right? So this is because that is a nightmare, because first it's just like a lot of work to do, and I could look past that, but it leads to mistakes, and that's not good. And if we deal with dynamic membership and we have one single source of truth, which is our Azure Active Directory, then just like things run just like more smoothly.
Definitely. It's interesting. I kind of thought all those groups were the same, so that's why I was a little confused by this one. That it's one of those things you assumed work straight away. So always good to see those gaps filled.
Yeah.
Assumption is the mother of all. I realized that there.
I mean, I know what you mean, but literally, so whenever you assume something should be working out of the box in Power Platform, it doesn't.
Is that a rule that is set in stone?
Yeah.
If you assume it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, so a lot of things that you want to have are possible to build, are possible to work around, something, but just like out of the box, you would just like imagine that this is just like be working from as of day one, and then they implement something after 5 years as an open source project, just like on top, not being part of the product, but just like testing things around. So this is how it usually works, and then 2 years later, it gets incorporated into the platform. So I like that this made its way pretty now.
I would say that's pretty quick for that, so that's quite good. I know Gary mentioned in the notes a couple more. So he was talking about the business unit security model by allowing security roles from different business units to be assigned to a user or team. And I think it's this one that I'm quite looking forward to, where you can kind of have those security groups, assign that as part of a team, and effectively give access to the app through that. Was the way I was reading it, but I may have misunderstood that looking at it quickly there. But Gary was certainly excited about this from the show notes. Unfortunately, can't be here because his daughter's ill tonight, but intrigued about that one. I was a bit confused about the public preview of co-authoring. I thought co-authoring had a preview before now. Was that for not for the modern app designer? Was that for a different element of Power Apps? No one knows.
No,
okay,
I think they
will move on quickly.
They talked about it, but it hadn't gone public preview in terms of actually being available for everybody to use.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, I would be very interested to see how this works, and I know from speaking to others that there's a lot of integration with source control needed around it. Someone was telling me, so which actually I think is a great thing. Sorry, Louise.
So if you see a Canvas app just like by itself, it kind of works. But usually solutions are more complex than just a Canvas app. So let's say I do have a custom connector that feeds my Canvas app with data. And of course, while developing my app, I will need to go back and forth to my custom connector and update the connector because I don't know, I need a new action, or I need to have something on the connector side. So with that, it will not work to co-author this application because the other one does not know that I updated my custom connector. So there's always just like work involved to talk about the thing that you're building, because a Canvas app does not live on its own. So basically, so for me, it's mostly just the beautiful interface, the more or less beautiful interface. But it's way more complex than Microsoft.
Less in many cases.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge to make it look nice.
Yeah, and I think that the co-authoring is really important when you have scale, when you have large apps that you need different people to focus on different areas. That's always been something that's a real challenge to say, actually, how can you scale the development effort, the releases, the bug fixing, all of those. You want those to be quite rapid and quick for some apps, but having the limitation of only one person, that's always been a bit of a challenge. I remember speaking to clients about this and coming up with all sorts of weird and wacky ways to kind of use DevOps to get around it before they introduce this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what I usually do is, so there is a Git integration. This is still experimental preview beta kind of thing, so it is not super reliable. There are still a lot of bugs in there, but if you get it to work, then just like only make the changes in the code and push those, and do not rely on rendering all of that then in the Maker portal, because this will mess things up again. So
the good news now, though, is that you only need one developer. In fact, not even that, because now Power Apps Ideas is there, and you can just naturally language type what you want, and it will auto-generate you a beautiful app like this within there. So, we don't need developers working on Power Apps, or even if they are.
I have
isn't that right?
I will say it. I have opinions. So how long are we into the show? So I have opinions. So thing is, first, it's not beautiful. Second, the question. So for most people working with Power Apps, the barrier is not the syntax of PowerFX code. The barrier is to think about the logic, about, hey, what do I want to do where? And then translate this into some kind of PowerFX code is a minor task. And this comes back to, you first need to solutionize whatever you need to build, regardless which framework you use, regardless which language you use. And then you need to build that. And then it doesn't matter if this is low code or if this is code, or if this is PowerFX, or if you write JavaScript or TypeScript or whatever. But I think so. Yeah, it might help in a way, but if you can't express yourself in PowerFX, which is the language to write the low code in Power Apps, then you will struggle, just like with a lot of things. And of course, it is okay to Google this and that from time to time, and we all do this. But if you really rely on those ideas, you will have a hard time to develop Power Apps.
Yeah, I agree.
I was intrigued that this was called Power Apps Ideas. It just seemed, because it's not creating a whole Power App, it is just Power FX, and it's it kind of feels like it's misnamed. Maybe there's an opportunity for a rename coming up here.
I think the only thing I'd say is that as someone who kind of dips in and out of Power Apps, I often forget the syntax from those Power FX, and whether it's called push or how you build into collections. So to be able to do it in natural language and see it suggest that and go, and then probably rework it to fit. That's the only context I can see, and I could possibly see it fitting in nicely. It's those occasional users rather than those regular ones. I think in the same way as if you're relying on recording macros back in the VBA days, it's going to be painful and not going to work. It's a similar thing to this. It may give you a nice nudge on it, but you shouldn't be relying on it at all. The other one that Gary noted was the PDF function. Now, I thought this was fascinating because I know that print was something that was, demanded for a long time and came in 2021. So now this has kind of taken that on to a level of just being able to kind of store as PDF. And I can imagine that it's been demanded for a lot. Not quite sure why you'd need this when it's very easy to print to PDF, but
that was something that I thought when I looked at this, was why are you not just using the print to PDF? I guess it's automating it in the background, but if it's only screen, then you have restricted real estate rather than maybe looking at all of the content that you need. It's not generating a PDF from content; it's just taking it from the screen.
No, it says you can expand to include tabular data that extends beyond the visible area of the screen or multiple screens as well. So I guess that's the extra bit of functionality.
Interesting to see how this plays out, this one.
Yeah, I can imagine lots of complaints about, hang on, it doesn't work when I print it in this very specific scenario. It's like, don't print it then. Save the world some paper.
I will
That's
not.
why it's
I
a
will not.
PDF. It's
I
digital.
will not jump on that one. No. I'm not a big
I
fan
mean,
of printing. It's just like
no, I
not on
agree.
paper, not as PDF. I don't get why people would want to do that. It's
Oh, wait.
more like
I know what this is for.
more like owning stuff, because now I have a printed copy. Now I own this. I think this is
No,
more
I know what
culturally.
this is for. This is the Elon Musk functionality. That's why it's there. So we can print out all the low code and understand what it is. It's the only reason for it. Louise is going
Good.
very quiet. It's like, I'm not having the haters bombard me. I'll leave that to Kev. Right. Let's move away from Power Platform onto something very close to my heart. Emily, you found some news on there.
Yeah, so Mark Cashman tweeted out the Viva ebook last week, which I think is incredibly helpful as more modules within Viva continue to get launched. When it first launched, we had connections and topics and insights, and now we have about 9 different ones. And finding the use case can be a little bit challenging for a lot of our organizations who still are experiencing that IT whiplash of trying to adopt Microsoft 365 in general. So what I love about this ebook is it started to put the different Viva modules into content areas. So we have connection, growth, insight, and purpose. So we're putting more into context. What are the situations that we're going to be using these Viva modules? So for example, under growth, that's where we have Viva topics. So you're going to be learning more about whatever that topic is. We also have Viva Learning, and they announced the addition of learning paths. So this ability to string together different content in Viva Learning so people can have more of a curated narrative of what they're learning. So all of those awesome announcements in those 4 quadrants in this 20-page ebook. And it's also a pretty good format where if you want to be socializing this content with some of the decision makers at your organization, this is pretty good marketing when it comes to big visuals, really clear short paragraphs about what each module is for. So you can also steal some of this content for your own internal presentations.
Absolutely agree. And I love that phrase, IT whiplash. I'm afraid I'm going to steal that. That is brilliant on there. But yeah, I've been a big fan. I've been using this ebook to kind of share with a lot of people kind of what the new apps of things like Amplify are. And I also think those 4, I don't know, they're calling them pillars now, but the kind of groupings of functionality and it's how it's being used rather than what it is, which to me that's the important thing about Viva. It is how you need to use it, it's how you get across, it's understanding where it fits into the organization for the different bits. And I think this ebook really shows how to make that pretty. It shows where the target audience is, I think, for a lot of the Viva stuff as well. Al, have you been having many Viva conversations? I know it comes up quite a bit in your workshops.
Pretty much every workshop I do has a Viva conversation in it. It's I mean it underpins so many of the decisions that organisations are trying to make, and how they're trying to engage with their staff. There are so many opportunities for Viva to help organisations, and half the time they're looking at it and going, I don't know how this fits in. I don't know how it actually plugs into what we're trying to solve as a business challenge. And I think that's really the key, where this kind of ebook really helps to actually explain to non-technical folks what the outcomes can be achieved from using some of this technology. And that's one of the challenges that I think most organizations, when they look at Viva, they go, it's from Microsoft, it's technical, we should get our IT department to look at it, which is actually really the wrong way to look at it. And we're having more success with clients when we're engaging with other areas of the organization, transformation, adoption, HR, facilities even, and they all look at this in a very different lens than IT do, and look at it in terms of different benefits they can get from it. So it's
those great conversations like, IT have been trying to get me to use Yammer for ages. I really don't want to use that, but I want to use Viva Engage instead. And these poor IT folks are like,
It's how you pitch it, isn't it?
I mean,
but
we had the same. We had the same discussions. No, we do not like to use SharePoint. We like Teams.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, absolutely.
So it's the very same thing, because people are confused, and guidance is super important, because they are lost, because it is just like a lot of products, a lot of use cases. It is very complex to understand how everything ties in together. And
Absolutely.
just imagine there are people just like with other jobs than we have, and they do not think about M365 plus, just like for 24/7. They have just like already other jobs and tasks and assignments.
What?
So if it's, I know it's, I know this is, it's mind blowing, but they have just like more on their plates. And if it's difficult for us who care about this just like with a lot of passion, and we make a lot of effort to understand all of that, then we can maybe imagine how hard it is for someone who has just like also other tasks and assignments and things to do in their just like day-to-day work. And then they need to learn all of that stuff that we make a living off, just like on the side. And I think this is incredibly hard, and it's just like a lot.
Absolutely.
And trying to convey the benefits to people as well. We live it, but actually those people that you're talking about, Louisa, who don't actually, live it, it's not their primary job. It's not why they go to work. It's something that is an enabler for them. If they can understand the benefits they can get, then all of a sudden they can transform their lives and transform the way they engage at work. So trying to actually, present it in a way that is understandable and not IT focused is really key for so many of the audiences that we don't necessarily always engage with, but actually who are going to be using all of this technology.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love the messaging about Viva, is it has been a lot more about putting the employee at the center. It's those 4 pillars of growth. It's not talking about Viva connections. It's talking about how you grow people. Okay, yeah, I've mismatched my pillars there, but it's talking about what you're trying to achieve rather than the kind of name of the technology, which is fantastic. However, there was a lovely bit of news for those who are involved in Viva and are in IT, that the new Viva IT admin features, and I did notice last night these have actually gone live within there, and they're kind of making it easy. Turn the sound off on that, to kind of be able to control your Viva environment from a single place, and be able to get to that, so you can search directly for Viva. It's actually doing anything. Yes, it is on there, and there's a central home that you can go to. I know it's been one of the challenges I've had talking to IT people about where you go and find things. Now there is a single place for all things Viva where you can configure the different elements like goals and insights and others in there. So it's one of those kind of relatively small changes, but I think certainly a nice one. And as someone at the South Coast Summit who did a whole workshop on trying to find the different elements and demonstrating to people, to now go, yeah, you just go here, follow the links, boom, you're done. Will save me a whole day. I can go and join the hackathon next year now. Should be fantastic. But I thought it was quite nice, and I have seen that in 2 different tenants, so that is starting to land for people now already. It's pretty good. Next one, Al, you're actually using this already. There was a couple of bits we didn't really cover much of the kind of hardware that was announced around the same time as Ignite. I know there were a few Surface devices and things, but I believe, Al, you are lucky enough to have a couple of the items there with you.
I do. So I've got the audio dock, which is I'm using it at the moment, so you can judge as to what the sound is like. I can certainly hear everybody here. So, and it's really designed to be a speaker, but to be actually a team certified device. So it does say it's team certified, which is always nice. We always like that little team certified logo. But it's got the button on it to mute it. It's got a color on there, so you can see when you're muted to make it quite apparent that you're muted. Controls the volume, controls playing and pausing, has a Teams button that is illuminated so that it will open up Teams. It's got a mixture of different ports, and it powers the laptop using USB-C. So it's powering my laptop at the moment. So it's quite nice in that respect, in terms of it's just that one USB.
Sorry, it powers, so you can get power out from it to plug straight into laptop. So
yeah,
really nice.
yeah. So it's charging my laptop. So I've got a Go laptop here, and it's charging it, and yeah, it works quite nicely in that respect. So I'm really looking at it going, docking station versus this. Oh, it's reasonably chunky. It's bigger than a docking station, but it does more. So there might be some good use cases for it. Working at home, docking station just has USB-C and not enough ports. This has a few more. So it's got three? Yeah, two USB-C, USB-A,
an HDMI and an USB-A, according to
and an
the
HDMI.
website.
Yeah. So I've got two monitors plugged in. And
I'm still looking for a docking station where I then do not need to have another docking station or hub or switch or something like that on top of that, because I have two big screens and I do need to connect them with a USB-C. Then I need just like a bunch of other USB-A and USB-C ports, and of course LAN, because reasons. Yeah, it's just like, and it's always like, so I have a docking station and then I have a USB hub on top of the docking station, because there are just like too many devices, and I can't be the only one with too many devices.
Yeah, you're definitely not the only one, and I think it's picking and choosing which ones are actually plugged in and that you're using at any one time, and which ones you're just kind of charging. So at the moment, I've got everything comfortably plugged into this, and everything appears to be working. So that's a good start. But yeah, I agree with you, Louisa. It's always exactly how many devices do we actually need and have plugged in? An awful lot.
Power do they need? And yeah,
and then they want power, and I of course I just like also have devices just like that I want to have close to me, just like I don't know, I want to charge my watch and my phone and my iPad or whatsoever that is not just like literally connected to my computer, but still I want them just like on my desk. And I do not like to have just like a lot of docks or a lot of hubs on them.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's the challenge. I always find it interesting these days to see whether things come with a USB-A, because the other thing I got was the clicker, and I know, Kev, you've got one of these, and it comes with a docking station that's USB-A, but nothing comes with USB-A in terms of the laptops. So it's kind of like, okay, what do I actually need? Yes, I need a USB-A hub just to actually plug in all of those things that need charging from USB-A.
We should say it connects via Bluetooth, so you don't have to have it plugged into the computer. That's purely USB-A for power and charging on there.
If you want to charge it with USB-C, so it does have the options.
Oh, yes, I hadn't noticed that.
But yeah, there's still we're still on a journey to get everything using USB-C. And to have that consistency, so that it's just, let's plug in whatever needs charging on one cable, and then everything else that we need connectivity to, we have kind of connecting either through Bluetooth or a limited number of connectors from a dock.
Yeah, I'm going to have a mini rant about USB-C and the damn thing of having a cable, which is a data connection cable versus a charging cable. And it can be two different things, and it never has a nice way of saying on your USB-C. So I've got 3 different USB-Cs. I don't know what's going to charge with it versus what's just going to connect. How on earth have they allowed this to happen? I do not know. It makes me very, very cross on a regular basis. So yeah. I wish they taught when USB-D comes, if they could just have one damn cable that works the same for everything, that would be very nice. Sorry, Louise, to take opinions as well, but I needed a mini rant on that one.
No, it's fine. So still looking forward to that one magical device that has just like a gazillion of parts for everything. Or just like even
And
let me just like choose, hey, I want 5 USB-A and 10 USB-C or whatsoever, and then just like mix and match. It's like Mr.
and
Potato
if it can
heading just
manage
like a duck.
and if it can manage the power between all the different things. So like I've got a lovely wireless charging mouse mat, but when I take off I don't know if it's going to work. If I take off my phone, you see, it's not going to do it now. But usually when I take off my phone, my little light up here that's powered by USB suddenly turns off and then turns on about a second later as it readjusts the power on there. Of course, it's not doing it because I'm trying to do a live demo and I haven't given my sacrifice to the demo gods today. But
Well,
I want to plug stuff in. I don't want to know about power or work out how many different things. It should just work. We're in 2022, for goodness sake. Anyway,
shall we buy Apple?
ranting.
I know it was mean, right?
I would say, Gazelle, you kind of briefly mentioned the Presenter Plus. Now, I've been considering getting one as we kind of gone back to live events of getting a clicker for there. I used to use my Surface Pen, but I'm kind of using that less and less. This, if you haven't got one, is a fantastic device because it also connects in with PowerPoint Live. So if you're doing presentations via Teams, you can click on that. It's got a little pointer built into it as well that you can use with there. Oh, and that works with the mouse as well. It's got the mute button, so similar what you were saying, Al, with the audio dock, where it kind of shows you when you're on mute. Same with that, and I've got it in my little dock thing there, so I've no kind of failing to see I'm on mute because it's right in front of me. Really nice device. Not cheap, and I think the same with the audio dock. I think the Presenter Plus was either 75 or 80 pounds. I think it was similar in dollars off the top of my head, and I think you were saying the audio dock. We'll put links there. Was 250. Was that right?
Pounds. Yep.
Which is not cheap, but then I know a lot of the docks aren't. So probably knowing it's a dock as well kind of makes it slightly different. And hearing the quality of that, yeah, I can kind of see that, but probably won't be jumping out to buy one straight away just yet. Maybe put it on the
put in an expense request, eh?
You can explain that to Steve when you see him in Manchester.
For home working, I need to have one of these, and the right kit. Hey, it's the way it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be fine. Right, onto our final little bit of news, and this is one slightly different, but this lady has been, I'll be honest, a part of my life for the last 16 years. I remember I was in Singapore back in 2006 and started to hear about this person, Mary Jo Foley, talking about and sharing the latest Microsoft news via ZDNet, and used to kind of always be on there because she used to have the inside scoop and release things before they got announced. I don't know how she got to know all these people. And then she kind of moved into videos and what's it, The Week in Windows, I think she does, and other podcasts and things. And I've been following for ages. She's one of a few people I have on my alerts on Twitter because I know when something comes up from her, it's either going to be a cat photo of her lovely cat, Sriracha. I can never say it until I've seen it on there, or it will be some really interesting Microsoft news that I haven't heard on there. And she's really been on top of the news, as she says, for the last 16 years and keeping up to date. She did have me as her community member of the month one time many, many moons ago, which I literally screamed out with excitement when I saw the tweet come through about that one. And she's fantastic, but she's sadly leaving ZDNet and heading off to the advisory service directions on Microsoft, which sounds intriguing. So we'll still be sharing all the latest Microsoft news, but certainly feels like end of an era. I remember being back in Singapore and trying to keep up with as much news back in 2006. So yeah, a few things have changed since then. Can you remember where you were back in 2006, Al? I know it was a long time ago now.
Yeah, I can remember it being managing applications, designing applications. So early, what would have been SAS, but SAS didn't even exist then. Oh yes, yeah, back in the day. So yeah, feels like a long time ago. That was before I went to even the first community event. So it was quite a different world back then. How you learned was very different.
I think I still had a lot of books back then.
I had an awful lot of books back then. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually why I went to my first user event, because they offered to give free books. That was it. That was enough motivation. Yeah, go and get a free
I thought it was
book.
just a pizza. God.
No.
What about you, Emily? Were you hard at work somewhere?
I was in college studying fibers and material studies. So, way before I realized my love of IT and systems, but definitely a precursor to my interest in user experience. So, early days of understanding how visual design can impact people.
Mm.
So sorry, materials, as in, because I did engineering. We used to have the material sciences next door, but that was all about kind of rocks and concrete and metals. Was that similar sort of thing then, or?
No, it's fibers and materials. So, very specifically under the art umbrella. So, things like
Oh,
In
nice.
the UK, it'd probably
embroidery,
be,
quilting,
yeah,
dyeing,
Yeah.
weaving.
it'd be called textiles in the UK, Kev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm like tick tick tick. I was trying to work out how material science and kind of UI could have gone together, because knowing a lot of people in material science, user looks were not their kind of forte. It's fair to say. Hello, if any of you are listening on there. But I'm now admiring the cushion behind you even more.
Yeah, that one's from, I guess this side, from Mexico City. I did a trip a couple years ago, and I'm very interested in all of the different kind of embroidery and reverse applique that people do in Mexico. So I had a trip specifically to go check out all those textiles.
Oh, nice. And you weren't involved in the SharePoint quilts. I think Christian Buckley was one of the people that put together. I know he's hanging up in the Seattle office. I know Leon Armstrong, he was over there for content services, and he had it up there. You weren't involved in that at all, were
No,
you?
I wasn't. I think that was before my time, before I was really out and about involved in the community. But if there's ever going to be another, sign me up.
I was going to say that. Christian, if you're listening, and I might tweet you afterwards now on that one. There we go, the Quilt Mark II. What about you, Louise? 16 years ago?
Well, so I was still in university studying economics and laws. And my daughter, who is now 17, was 1 year old. Wow.
Wow.
That is so it's kind of a long time ago, but it's just like it's the blink of an eye, just like really. It's yeah.
Gosh, I hadn't realized she was that old. That's scary.
Yeah, so she's 18 very soon. So it's it's totally incredible. But yeah, so back then I did not work in tech. This is only since about 5 years that I'm doing tech, and it's a wild ride still. And I never had this experience to learn M365 nor development by books. It is all social media. It is watching videos. It is going to user groups and conferences and learning just like directly from people. But it's not just like where someone else wrote a book and then I buy a physical copy of that book and then I read this. But it's more like, yeah, someone put out a blog post and then I was just like skim this and search for the first image and hope that this will just like give me just like at a glance. So
Just
when I
give
was
me the
looking at,
answer.
yeah, just give me the answer because so yeah, we find references. We do not find answers in the internet. That's of course a problem because people want to have the answer. They do not want to have a site with links to maybe just like exploring content and then just like make up the answer by themselves. So they do not want that. And I'm a user as well. So yeah, so I will just like pick the first image and then say, this is how it works, and then I'll try the thing on my own. But I never had this experience of just like learning coding from a book or learning how M365 or back then because it works just like just like that. But it's interesting to hear those war stories.
Oh, they have left scars as well.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
All that back
do
pain
miss the
from your
books.
bags.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, all those books. Yeah, it's always hard work. Yeah, when I got rid of them all, I took pictures. So I had a record of what I had because they were some quite weird and wonderful
I wish I
books
had.
over the years.
I was at the Collab Days Bletchley Park. I know, Louise, you were there earlier this year as well. And they had all the old classic books up round in the speakers room, and I was just sat there gazing at them for hours. I was like, I miss these. Glad I don't have to use them, but I miss these at the same time.
Yeah, so Bletchley is an amazing place, like for real. So I totally enjoy to be there, just like surrounded by all this old tech. So where I don't understand what these machines are doing, but I got educated by my little daughter about that. So she was like, "So that's a computer, right?" I said, "Yes, this huge thing that's just like room filling. This is a computer." She's like, "Yeah, so it does what every computer does. It takes an input, it computes, and then it gives you an output." I was like,
right, if you think it's that easy, you come and debug this app. Yeah.
yeah. So I thank you, right?
No
I thank you.
yeah.
Okay, it's fine. So
exactly.
yeah,
She's absolutely right, but still depressing.
yeah. So but whenever anyone has the chance, just like to go to Bletchley in UK, this is just like super highly recommended. It's a lovely place run by volunteers, lovely elderly people who have so many cool stories to tell about this fantastic place, and it's really heartwarming.
Yeah, I missed 2 sessions because I started chatting to one of the volunteers. I was like, "Oh, a topic here. Oh, well, let's carry on chatting now." No, I highly recommend going and speaking or just visiting that as well. Cool. I think we covered the news. A few little updates on events. I know Gary on Wednesday, so November the 2nd, is speaking at FinJS London. He's keynoting it apparently, although I don't see his name. Oh, that was FinJS New York. Because I also recognise Brian Dolan, who I used to work with and fight about SharePoint on a regular basis. I was hoping he was over. I can go and have a chat with him and see if he still hated SharePoint. But I know Gary's talking about, I think it's M365 apps there. So well worth it. I know it's probably slightly last minute for people listening to this. We also have, and I haven't put their links up in here, but I'll put the link in the show notes. Al and I are at the Viva Explorers Community Day up in Manchester on November the 12th. I think it is, the Saturday on there. So a whole day of Viva events to come along, all free, with some Microsoft funded pizza. Lots of it from what I've just heard and seen on the Teams chat going on. So that's great news. Will be a good one there. We've got M365 Chicago, which I don't think any. Emily, you're not speaking at Chicago, are you?
No, not this year, but I have previously.
Yeah, I was thinking I know others have done that, and I know there are quite a few of the Viva Explorers and others speaking remotely from that. So there's a lot of people at that event, so do sign up, whether you're in person or virtually as well. But the big one coming up, which I haven't got the picture of, so I'm going to hide the screen quickly, but it's the European SharePoint Conference, which I've just found out Emily's coming over, so I'll get to see a real life Emily as well, which is very exciting. I know, Louise, you'll be there and a lot of other people, so very, very excited about that event. It's going to be fantastic. I was looking at my ESPC woolly hat from Prague recently and thinking I might need that for December in Copenhagen, but although I hear Yannick's going to be jumping in a sauna and then into cold lakes, if you can find any, from what I could hear on the chat. So worth attending for that. I can see Al's face on that. I didn't say anything about naked. You're just making that face and assuming things there, Al. That's not fair. I'm going to get in trouble now. But yeah, it will be an absolutely fantastic event. And I think Louise and Emily, are you allowed to publicly say what you're up to? I should have checked this before.
Yes. So this is super official, and you can find information on SharePointEurope.com as well. So I will have the very, very great pleasure to be on stage together with Emily and with Vesa and Derek and also Laura Kokarinen, and we will be part of the extensibility keynote, which is taking place on that Thursday at, I think, 8 a.m., which means no late party for Emily nor myself on Wednesday evening. And we will be showcasing how you can just configure and extend M365 with no code, low code, pro code, and just hardcore pro code.
There we go. I found you now. It's going to be an
So and
incredible
talking
download.
all the good
Does
things, just
this-
like configuring and just like extending, and so we have Viva and Teams and SharePoint, and so we just like cover everything, and it just like shall give people an idea what you can do, and it's a lot.
As can be said, does this mean as kind of Visa's doing it? Does this mean you're all going to be taking your shoes off for it, or just in fact him jumping off table?
Well, I think Visa will be on his socks. I usually change shoes, so I'm doing more the Jeff Teeper move, just like changing shoes before my session. He's taking off his shoes. I don't know, Emily. What about you?
Hard to say. I do appreciate the warning because as someone who normally wears ballet flats, being barefoot on stage rings a little different than with socks on. So I might have to pack a pair of socks just in case everyone goes rogue.
Yes.
Thankfully, I do have tons of Viva socks. Yeah.
No, so so I have stage shoes, so I always go on stage in high heels because it makes me feel good, and but I can't walking down the entire conference day because you just like walk a lot in huge conference venues. So usually this is just for the session itself. But yeah, we will see.
No, it's going to be a great event. This every time I keep hearing more and more people are coming, and it's like, oh, I can see so and so is going to be there. Hey, I'm looking forward to meeting Derek. Actually, I have a lot of questions about Iceland for him, and as well as Viva connections. But
yeah, I have a lot of Viva connections questions to Derek. Hi, Derek. And he knows. And I'm just like, how did you do that? And how awesome was that? How did you come up with it? So it's just like. Yeah, so I try to reverse engineer just like a lot of samples. Sometimes I was like, how did you do that? So I realized what he did, but not how he could come up with that. So yeah, asking questions is a good way to learn.
No, it'd be very cool. Right, I think we will wrap up part 1 there. And if you're on the live stream, do stick around. We're going to be carrying straight on to part 2, where Emily's going to talk to us about when to use Yammer over Teams. So thank you very much for everyone listening to part 1, and join you soon. So having listened to that lovely bit of music, we will listen to it again as we kick off part 2.
Oh, wait. I need 5 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
I need to go to pee. I'm sorry.
I should note that we are still live.
Yeah, so people should know that I need to pee now.
It's biological, that's fine.
Well.
Do you know, one day we'll do. Yes, so yeah, if you want to go on mute and turn your camera off, because we're still streaming and we can't find a way to stop and pause that, but we'll carry on and have a chat before we kick off part 2. Thanks, Louise. Do you know, one day, Al, we do need to go through and get all the outtakes when I have some time. But you know, maybe over Christmas.
There are a lot of outtakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we also need to update the image we put up.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking at that and making a note and then trying to work out where I'm going to put that. Oh, I do have to do open, so it's going to go into my to-do list of interesting stuff I don't have time for on there. GHBP.
I have a really long one of those.
Yeah, that's a to consider list, not a to-do list.
Yeah.
I'm just here we go. It's got improve whereabouts to email flow. So I actually have a flow which takes my kind of tasks and puts them into the calendar now, finally. But it can't handle when I have more than one thing on the same day. So I need to improve that.
What, you multitask on a single day? You have more than one thing to do? Wow.
Apparently so, yeah, which isn't ideal. Great. We are all back. So let's kick off with part 2.
The Grey Hat Beard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Grey Hat Beard Princess Show 68, Part 2. If you haven't listened to Part 1, if you're listening on the podcast and you haven't listened to Part 1, go back and to listen to that. If you're listening on the video on Facebook, YouTube or Twitter, we are streaming live, so you'll have to wait until we finish recording and then you can go back and listen to us all again, which will be well worth it because we had some lovely chats about the kind of updates. Was it the October 22 updates for Power Platform? We had a lovely chat about the Viva ebook, talked about Al's nice new MAD device, the Microsoft Audio Dock, and said thank you for Mary Jo Foley and trying to remember what the hell we were doing 16 years ago. But in part 2, we're going on to our specialist topic, and we are joined by Emily Mancini today, who's going to try and convince probably some cynical people out there as to the times you should use Yammer over Teams on there, which I don't know why, but it's always been a bit of a controversial subject when it seems to come to Yammer, which I think is nuts. I'm happy to say I'm a Yammer fan, but I'd certainly get some abuse. Luke Evans, hello if you're listening. We love Yammer. You can shut up. On there. But Emily, why should we bother using Yammer, not just use Teams for everything?
There's a couple of different features that Yammer better supports. One of the things that I think is important to talk about, and just to go backwards a bit, Microsoft launched the conversation quite a few years ago, right when Microsoft 365 groups came out, around this idea of an inner loop and an outer loop. So, from the Microsoft perspective, these two solutions are serving very different needs. So, the people I'm working with on Teams is a known group of people. And let's say we are working on the marketing, for example, there are a set number of people who are going to be in that group. Now, Yammer is your outer loop, so it's everyone at the organization. So you can pitch items, questions out there to a much broader audience. Similarly, your email is most likely an inner loop as well, because we're putting whoever's in that two line. We're not going to cast that wide net. So for a while, it was a little bit more clear of, okay, well, when I want to talk to the whole organization, I'm going to use Yammer. Well, then they came out with org-wide teams, and I feel like this conversation really lit on fire. And majority of the clients that I'm working with now have all implemented Microsoft 365 during the pandemic, and they started with Teams, didn't really think about SharePoint, didn't really think about the intranet, and were just pretty heavy into Teams, made an org-wide team. And that's their all company updates. Well, we put a bunch of different things in all company updates, things that are important about getting your job done, but then also some of this cultural social building content as well. Like it's International Dog Day, and all of my colleagues want to show pictures of their animals. Well, if I'm doing all of my work in Teams, as well as all of my socializing in Teams, I'm getting all of my notifications in one spot without the ability to separate those two. So I know a lot of people talk about, let's not use Yammer. I don't want to create distractions, but I would push back pretty hard on that and say, out of the notifications you're getting in Teams, how many of them are actually critical for your job if you are refusing to go to something like Yammer for that social aspect at your organization? Does this track with what you're seeing across organizations for how they've been implementing and using Teams, especially during times of the pandemic?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that is a really common issue for a lot of people with Teams is, oh, I can't see the channels for the teams. You know, they get added to so many teams, and they then can't focus on what's actually important. And a lot of those teams aren't actually relevant to their day job, to what they're actually trying to stay focused on. So I think what you're saying about the use Yammer to actually remove some of the distractions is actually very valuable, because a lot of those conversations you want to have moved somewhere where you can manage the notifications differently. So you can say, actually, in Yammer, I'm going there for this reason. In Teams, I'm going there for this reason. And it's a really valuable separation. I think the other thing that I see a lot of in terms of that conversation is horizontal communication. You know, so you talk about inner loop and outer loop. I kind of try and describe it as vertical and horizontal as well, and
like
that resonates well. So, your vertical is you know exactly where you are. You're in a department, you're in a team, you're having conversations around a particular subject, and there's lots of silos there. But your horizontal is I don't know who's going to be interested in this. I don't know where I'm going to get the answer from. And we all might have the shared interests. So it creates a very different way of sort of perceiving the conversations and why you choose to actually use those two different tools between Teams and Yammer.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so I see similar things. So customers are more like, I do not want to have yet another Tamagotchi to take care of, just like another thing, another app that just like distracts me, and just like they need to react on that. For them, it appears to be easier if everything was just like in one application. And to that point, yeah, but if I have just like different applications,
Yes,
then I
it's
can.
called email.
Yeah, but if I have just like different applications, then I can just like, I don't know, decide more granularly on what do I want to react and how do I set up my notifications. Well, if that was the only thing, and I'm pretty sure that Emily will just like give another thing as well, but just like, so if that was the only thing, then I would just like blame the Teams product group to just like not being able to provide us with notification settings that actually make sense. Right. So just for the sake of, yeah, but I want to just like distinguish between stuff that really impacts my project work and stuff that I might benefit from because of serendipity and just like other things that are just like that you can't really plan, that are usually happening more on Yammer, or just like more the water cooler talk than just like this focused work on projects. Then I would just like blame them to just like give us settings that actually make sense, and of course include some just like learning algorithm that makes sure that if I make the wrong choice, that it gives me a warning. Hey, you're missing out on something that may impact your work, something like that. But I'm pretty sure that Emily has some opinions on that as well.
I do have specifically 3 features that I think are better in Yammer and Teams. Before we go to those, I do want to call out though the idea of having different conversations in different apps is something that we do every single day outside of Microsoft 365. I call my grandmother on a phone call. I text my mom, and some of my friends I talk to on Instagram. So I'm going across a bunch of different communication channels on a daily basis, and there's never been a situation in my personal life where I've heard someone else be like, it's really annoying that I have texts, phone calls, and social media messages. People understand that there's different audiences in each and different reasons that I would be using each of them. So I think that we've all displayed the ability as humans to be able to go across all these different solutions and apps. And I strongly believe in our ability to do it in Microsoft 365 as well, depending on what that outcome objective we want is. We were talking about that earlier with the Viva ebook as well. And I think Yammer gives us some different outcome objectives. So,
I
sorry, go
kind
ahead.
of agree with those different ones, because I was going to say exactly that. People know that their kind of work community type stuff. You've got LinkedIn, you've got Twitter, where's your interests, you've got Facebook and Instagram for your friends or people you follow from there. The only problem is when you talking about community is when those community people become your friends and kind of bleed into your work life and on Instagram, and you can't remember where the hell you had that conversation within there. All those different places. That's the one bit, that having a single place, try and find out where that chat was, and text, as you say, as well. So being able to do that, and that I think is one bit where actually Yammer and Teams is better than that, because you have that overriding search that you can get between that email, Yammer, Teams. You can search between all of those, which I think's a nice side to it as well. And I hope I haven't just taken one of your 3 examples yet.
No, you haven't. And if you did, that would be all good. But to the point of kind of consuming content, we can start there. One thing that Yammer has that Teams doesn't is this home feed. So anywhere that I have access, any conversations that are happening in the various communities, I can view in one feed scrolling down, similar to what you're used to on other social media, where across your different areas, you're seeing those updates. In Teams, I have the notifications where someone mentioned me or they replied to something that I started. But if I just want to see what's been happening in my organization, let's say I was out of the office for a week, I have to go through to the different teams and channels and follow the bold for where I don't have those notifications. So I can consume the content in context, but it's a manual effort for me to go across everything to find what's new in the past week.
I think that's really valuable because we see a lot of people don't look at the activity in Teams, that activity feed, or they're just looking, as you say, for things that really directly relate to them. You can't just browse just general activity easily at all, which I think is probably something that should come to Teams sooner or later. But then you've still got that kind of, well, actually, I just want a news feed. I want to digest. I want to be able to just scroll at my own speed as far as I want to go without feeling obliged to go all the way down. Where the activity feed theoretically is things that you should be reading and should be aware of, theoretically.
But I also say the feed within Yammer. The thing I love, and I'm a big someone who's very concerned about bubbles, of kind of us disappearing into our own social media bubbles and not realizing there are other opinions and other things happening. You know, here's someone in the Microsoft world. I know, Al, in the pre-show, you were talking about how does things link in with workplace. And I was like, Facebook Workplace, sorry, Meta Workplace, or whatever it's called these days. I haven't looked at that for ages. You kind of get sucked in this bubble. One of the things I love about the Yammer feed is that it actually kind of stretches out beyond just those pure communities you're following, just where your mentions are. It kind of picks up on things outside of that and things that it thinks you might find are interesting, whether it's people you follow have posted on there and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed that before. And I know for our internal one, you know, we're only 100 people at CPS, but still there's things like mountain biking that I don't generally follow. But someone talked about going out for the day, and I was like, do you know, that would be quite fun. That's a bit different. It kind of branches out and keeps things out of just your narrow focus occasionally as well, which I think is actually really important that you do have that spread.
So I chuckle because you mentioned mountain biking, which was the first Yammer group that was actually set up, that actually took off, that actually was positive and had that engagement, because it was exactly that. It was a new way to actually communicate about something that people had a shared interest in and could coordinate something extracurricular, which I think is one of the really valuable things that Yammer does give you, is those extracurricular things that aren't, you know, we see a lot of organizations trying to tie teams down and to govern teams and to make sure that, you know, there's not sprawl, whereas Yammer, well, that's all right.
People you can't talk about this. That's not work. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
and, you know, we were talking about connections earlier. This is how you build connections in an organization, by finding out what connects people, whether it's mountain biking, whether it's animals, whether it's food, drinking is always a classic one as well. And
sports.
It's what connects people.
Cheers to that, but so what I really struggle with is I do see Yammer as part of the workplace, but whenever we talk about Yammer in community, it's like, yeah, but then the dog lovers, and then the mountain bike, and then all the things that do not impact work. And there are, of course, more traditional or conservative customers. And if you tell them, yeah, but then all your mountain bikers have a group, or all your dog lovers have a group, and they're like, ugh. And then they don't get the point. So, and if this thing of, yeah, you need to connect people in a meaningful way so that they will build trust, and then this element of serendipity comes in so that they will then just like build greater things together. So that is the purpose of this whole thing. They don't get this that easily. So if we always perpetuate this idea of, hey, this is for the dog lovers and for the moms, or for, I don't know,
Hmm.
things that
I-
do not
Yeah,
impact
you.
work too much, then more traditional and more conservative
I think
customers will not get the message.
Yeah.
I think you're right, depending on the level that you picture that, because you have those hobbies, but then you also have, so in Microsoft, there's a lot of employee resource groups. So there's veterans, there's families, there's women in IT, there's all sorts of other areas that are sponsored by the organisation and are really kind of focusing in on changing the culture and building the culture. But then there's also connected communities, which is basically, all right, I want to find out about M365. I've got an open place to ask a question and to actually find information, which is, that is more of that horizontal, doesn't matter where you're based, what team you're in, you can find that information really easily and ask questions and get those responses and have that interaction, as opposed to going, now, which team do I need to actually join to be a member? Do I need to actually request access to that team? Am I going to get access? It's more that there's multiple levels of those conversations in Yammer that you can set up. But I think you're absolutely right, Louise. If we focus on just those extracurricular activities, absolutely, there's a lot of organisations will go,
I
well, I
feel
don't
like
really care about those.
so it has its place. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah,
It's just like the how this narrative is just like perceived by some executive. It's just like it
Yeah.
is not doing Yammer a favor. And I think if we change that narrative from it's kind of the hobby thingy to, hey, this is adding meaningful value, and you have a return on investment from that if you connect people. And so I feel like, so we have communities of practice and communities of interest, and mostly if we talk about this extracurricular communities of interest, then we perpetuate a narrative that is not doing Yammer a huge favor. Although this also has its place, but I think if we start the conversation with that, then the likelihood that we will have Yammer in the workplace is like decrease. And the
I
likelihood
think the
that this
only
is adding value a lot is just like decreasing as well, because we need to balance things, right?
the only thing I say is that I've seen many times now with implementing Yammer and actually other social networks back when I was on the client side is we would just see, let's go live with a social network. Let's chat about work. Let's chat about these things. Let's chat about blah. And it would just be dead. And then you would start the conversation with the kind of non-work related one, whether it's animals, sports, etc. And then when people get it, and it would evolve onto the other one. It needs a little bit of guiding at times to kind of explain and help that. But that is what was the kind of torch paper. It's what lit it and got people to kind of understand the benefits. I absolutely agree with you that we always kind of go in and talk about that. And you've got to be very careful around that because it's going to scare people off a little bit. 100% agree with that. But it is the torch paper that really brings people to it and to make them actually care about it and see the benefits that then make other conversations happen that are more work related on there. And it brings those passionate people out around those passionate subjects.
So yet again, sorry, Emily, yet again, super agreed on that with you, Kev, as well. Still think that if we want to do such a thing like Yammer the right way, we need to talk about community management. That means we need to have budget.
Yeah.
And budget for the dog lovers and the mountain bikers is not easy to get. Just that.
No, I don't know. It depends which managers like doing it, but
I have seen Microsoft respond well to that because I do think that Yammer has been kind of the forgotten stepchild of Microsoft 365 for quite a while. And especially with the release of Teams and org-wide teams, that's just added fuel to that fire. But in September, Microsoft announced the Leadership Corner in Viva Engage. So here is a more focused work scenario of how can I enable leaders to see participation in their conversations, take those take surveys of the organization, get analytics. And if you send out a email from an org leader, you're going to have those couple people who feel very confident doing reply all that we kind of get annoyed by, and then you're going to have a whole bunch of people who aren't comfortable replying at all, and then you'll have a couple people who reply directly to just that leader and no one else sees it. So to be able to have these leadership conversations in the open, see that full engagement, and bring down that barrier to entry a little bit, because email feels so much more formal and higher level to reply to an all company email. What do I have to say that's so important that has to be in everyone's email inbox? But it's more likely that I'm going to be on Yammer,
do
right?
not reply to an all company email.
Yeah, please don't. But and we had that problem when I was at a biotech. We were 150 people. We grew to 1,500 people, and we implemented Microsoft 365. And in those 4 years of that crazy company growth, we had a company-wide distribution list that was open to anyone. So anyone at any moment in time could decide that they wanted to share something with the company, and they absolutely would. So in that use case, we implemented Yammer because we wanted to take some of that conversation again out of email. At the time, we didn't have Teams. So it was similar to that notifications conversation, but making sure we're having the right conversations where people can fully engage. And then there's also that whole release of answers. So Yammer has always had question and answer, and you can select best answer, which you can never do in a thread in Teams. You just have to read the whole darn thing and decide for yourself. But they're now going to
If
be
you can find the correct
yeah, if you can find a good answer
yeah.
or someone answered it.
Yeah.
There are
But
no
now
answers. There are only opinions.
yeah, and other questions.
Yeah.
But now they're integrating the best answers in Yammer with the answers in Viva Topics. So now we're seeing these open loop conversations, harvesting real work content, adding value to documenting our institutional knowledge at our organization. So I really appreciate how Microsoft is really trying to focus on the ways that Yammer, which in Teams, right, is called Viva Engage, can support our ability to do work better and more effectively. And I find it's most helpful platform when you have your Microsoft 365 champions, your citizen developers, your makers, whatever you call them at the organization, having a Yammer network where we have an open conversation and people can see the real problems that are getting solved, I find to be the best advertising for why you want to learn these technologies versus putting all of those makers in a private team where no one else sees what's going on and gets that hint of interest of how exciting this could be to be solving my day-to-day problems in this platform with these variety of tools that are available to me.
I think the Champions Network, that really is one of the most powerful uses of Yammer. I'm trying to use this lovely tool that somebody's mentioned. Oh, it's going to save me a lot of time. I've spent half a day working on it. Oh, now I've got a problem. Do I Google it, or do I actually just have a look internally? And if I know that there's resources internally, that's a much more powerful way to actually find other people who have come up against the same challenges internally, and maybe have great examples that they can share straight up that maybe are already approved by the organization, already sanctioned. Those are really where you get those wonderful stories of how you can benefit from things in terms of the technology and implementing it. And that is a great scenario in terms of the value that you actually get organizationally from using Yammer, as opposed to using Teams and not being able to say, I've answered that question. It's also the kudos that people get when they actually have their answers marked as being, yes, that's the best one.
Yeah. I think this makes people proud, and it's just like they like it because, hey, it was me just like giving that answer.
It's that dopamine hit, isn't it?
It is.
Of course.
And I mean, we were joking about no budget earlier, but in all seriousness, the organization where I was formerly a platform owner, we didn't have a budget for a lot of our initiatives. So I joined when we were 150 people, and my first day was being part of a committee. We had tons of committees where you would opt in to doing things outside of your normal day to day in your job, and we would have cross functional representation. And the one that I joined on day one was about recruitment. How are we going to hire essentially 100% of the people that we have right now? And we needed everybody's diverse perspective. So sometimes you have more of a volunteer situation at your organization. And because it's open to anyone that wants to be involved, Yammer is a great place to put all of those different committees so people see what's available to them. And there's a lot of benefits to an organization, because if you're going to be in these cross-functional teams, you're building new relationships, you're learning new things about different parts of the
Absolutely.
organization, and you're probably skill building as you're part of this committee as well. So I think there's a lot that
learning.
organizations can get.
Yeah. And I think that's really true. Building those, as Al, you were talking about, that horizontal community, that building bridges across different areas related to different things. And I think recruitment's a fantastic example, because it's something that every team at some point will have to go through, whether it's sales, operations, delivery. They're going to be hiring people and bringing people on. So looking at where you can get the common threads through that by having that diverse thread of people, diversity of roles and diversity of people as well, will kind of throw the different ideas into that and build something through. And yes, I guess some of the questions is, why couldn't you just do that with Teams? I think it's just that link. Yammer has been designed to kind of work in that more cross-functional way. It's been designed to put in there. Could I put a finger on exactly which elements? I think the home feeds you've talked about in there, definitely, but there's a few small things that isn't easy until you've kind of spent time with both to really kind of go, yeah, that does work. But it just, because it's geared towards that, it flows naturally to the same thing as well.
I do think there's, the whole question and answer piece, though, is incredibly valuable, and now that it's going to be tying into topics as well, makes it even more valuable, because there's so many people. We talked a bit about, in the previous episode about 16 years ago, what were we doing? Reading books on technology. We learn in a very different way, and being able to actually have those questions and answers is a really effective way, both, for those people who are joining the organization or have a new role, to actually gain information, but also for those people who are answering, to kind of, show what knowledge they have and share and give back to the organization as well. So that whole kind of circle of, well, I can grow by asking questions. It's the best way to grow. Creating that safe culture. It's okay to ask questions. We encourage it. Those are really, really positive cultural influences on an organization. So that really is a very powerful tool in terms of building a really positive culture in an organization.
Absolutely.
I do want to deviate slightly, because I'm getting very distracted by the chat, and we talked about kind of building culture and things like that. There has been a comment from Pete Rising saying that this is Al's best hat yet. And we haven't mentioned your hat yet, but it is absolutely spectacular today.
I had to dig something interesting out. So yeah.
I was waiting for the sausage hat, but are you saving that for the presentation?
That's been. I don't know where that is actually. I think that's downstairs. So yeah, it's not made it up here. Not yet.
So Emily, you talked about three things. We've talked about the news feed. We've talked about answers. Have we covered the third one?
So the fact that we get a Yammer web part, I get this question all of the time with new clients, especially ones who have an org-wide team. And we are building our intranet, and we're building communication sites. And how can we bring the conversations that are happening elsewhere, and in this situation, usually it's Teams, into that communication site? And you can't. You can bring SharePoint into the team as a tab, but you're not actually going to be able to have that posts and have any of that surfaced on your communication site. So going back to that Champions Network example, to have a communication page or communication site with a homepage where I'm talking about what the program is, upcoming trainings, extra points if you also have a learning pathways playlist of how to do everything embedded in the page. And then at the bottom there, I have my Yammer web part. So it's literally somebody's one-stop shop to, I have a question to ask maybe some of my other experts, maybe my answers in my training, maybe I'm going to a training, what are the new releases in news? So the fact that you can bring the conversations into your intranet, I think, is very powerful too.
Absolutely agree on that. And if I had a big wish for Microsoft, which I have to admit I've forgotten about for a while, it's to have the ability to have comments on a page actually be surfaced in Yammer, so you could see that feed, you could see the comments and conversations come through. I know you can post pages into Yammer and have the chat there, but to be able to, instead of having the slightly dodgy engine that they use now to kind of do comments where they just disappear, or you get bombarded with notifications, or one person does and no one else sees it, to be able to have that in a feed to kind of drive the chats happening from pages would be really nice. I did write a little web part that did it once, but it was so hacked together I wouldn't trust it on a SharePoint Online anymore. It was back in my naughty days of hacking through things, but it kind of brought the conversation, because people could see the chatter going on with page and pages, not just when they looked at pages, but from within their feed. So it worked very nicely. But technically, yeah, Louise, you'd have a fit. That's it. Broke so many rules. And you'd be absolutely right as well, which is why I haven't pushed it anymore. But I would love to see that capability to kind of bring those links between what people are sharing and what people are chatting about into one place. Would be really powerful.
Yeah, I think this is what everyone wants to have, is infamous single pane of glass. Just like, yeah. I want to see everything in just like one app. And of course, Emily just like shared before. So in private life, we're just like well used to just like use different apps for different purposes, and we have or she shared that we do not have a lot of issues with that. But we all know that if we share different, let's say, WhatsApp groups, when they overlap with the same people, then
South Coast Summit.
yeah, well, then we don't know anymore. Oh well, in which chats did they share this or that? And then we rely on search, and search skills are just like so valuable. And people still don't know how to search correctly, because no one taught them how to do this, because everyone assumes that this is a basic skill like reading, and turns out it isn't. And we struggle with that in private life as well. Just like, which app was that? So was that in consumer app A or in consumer app B, if they are similar? And if it was consumer app B, then in which chat was that? And maybe that was just like, I don't know, maybe it was a different account or something like that.
Was it
So
a DM? Was it in the feed?
yeah. So did someone just like tag me on Twitter? Or did someone send me a DM? Or did someone choose to just like, I don't know, tag me on Instagram?
Send me an email.
I don't read those. So I'm my friends. It's just like so I sent you an email. So it's just like I behave like those people, just like my kids. So you need to tell me if you write me an email, so then I would just like go look that I have an email.
Send you a message in WhatsApp. Yeah, just send you an email.
Yes, basically that. So my mom is doing that actually. Yeah, so we struggle with that in private life as well. And of course, people want to have overview, but the more overview we have, there is a lack of detail then, of course, because then it's so crowded, it's so full that we lack of the context. And Teams was trying. Well, the purpose of Teams is to try to resolve that conflict of, I want to have overview, just like I want to have this high level overview, but also I want to gain insight. So, which is why they gave us context to work at the right content. But it's not enough, because we have information overload. There's just like, it's too much. And it's hard to say what is relevant for me, and what is relevant for me changes all the time, because what I'm interested in,
that's a really good point.
It changes a lot. It changes during the day, it changes during the month, it changes during the year as well. So if I can't even tell what is relevant to me, because maybe I think, well, that project that I'm doing with person ABC, I don't like them anymore, therefore I'm not interested in that, or I will not put that as my priority at the moment. So this means technically it is relevant to me, but practically I would just like put that aside.
Yeah, and I think that's being able to find all of that information and apply that relevance. I think you're right. People don't know how to search. I mean, for me, my go-to is always Bing and the work search in Bing. to search all of the M365. It's got, for me, the best filters. I can look in Yammer, I can look in Teams, I can see it all really quickly and easily and find it. And it doesn't matter where it's been created. I can see it all in one place.
Sorry, Al, just for anyone listening who hasn't realized this is using Bing where you've connected your work account so you can look at Bing results externally plus all your internal connections as well.
Yeah. So it really has the best filtering to find information. So contextually, you're not really going, I'm going to look in Yammer, I'm going to look in Teams. I'm just looking in M365 as a whole. I'm still waiting for it to make its way into the Microsoft 365 search so that you've got those same filters, because they are brilliant. And if you haven't tried it, I strongly recommend testing it.
Absolutely. So since we're talking search and we've all maybe had a little bit of a rant, maybe it's okay for me to drop mine in. So we keep talking about this idea of single pane of glass in Teams, and there's a huge, huge gap. So we talk a lot about Viva Connections and bringing our intranet into Teams. There is no search. You just have navigation. So this is a huge, and I've done a lot of user testing in organizations because I work primarily with out of the box and I focus on user experience. And I always recommend let's do user testing in the beginning to kind of baseline and see what people are doing. And it's a really large majority of your organization. It shifts depending on each one, but it's usually like 40 to 60% of people who want to be primarily using search. So if they're not even looking at your navigation and they can't search your intranet, what's the benefit of bringing it into Teams? They're not going to click around and look for things.
So it turns out that some people even don't understand what is navigation.
Mm.
I'm just saying that there is a younger generation that does not understand what is navigation, because there's no
Google.
navigation on Google. And if I search for an app on my phone, what do? Do you navigate through the folders, or are you using Spotlight or whatever it's called on Android? You will use search because you know the first letters of that app, and this is the easiest way to access something. So I would just like type in the search bar in the Windows. Hey, what is the file called? I will not just like navigate through just like a gazillion of subfolders. Why would I?
I know why this is, Louise. That's because you can't remember what color your different apps are. That's
I can remember. I can remember. So for everyone who does not know, the apps on my phone are just like sorted by colors. So I have a green folder, a yellow folder, an orange folder, a pink folder, and so on and so forth. And I just like group them by color because I find this more beautiful. Because sometimes I do not remember the name, and then of course search does not help me because I don't remember the name of the app that I rarely use, but I will always remember the icon color because I'm a visual learner.
I completely agree with you, Louise, because I often just scroll and go, right, I'm just looking for the icon. I can't remember what it's called. Oh yes, it's that one. And
yes, and of course there are apps that I use every single day, and of course I know their names, but there are apps that I use, I don't know, once in a quarter or just like maybe only once in a month, and then I can't remember.
They're the ones that
what is the name of that app, and maybe it changes also. So not only Microsoft is changing names, just as a spoiler. No, and then I can just like access that by navigation, but usually that does not make any sense if you're just like, yeah, that's a travel app and that's a productivity app. But what if I have an app that is serving my productivity while being on the road? So because there's only one assignment if we deal with folders, and then just like the color is just like super, it's a unique identifier for me, and then I group by that. But usually I use search to access an app. And that is what I do on my phone. And same goes for my computer, which runs on Windows 10. I would just like type in the name of the file that I want to access and then hit the enter key once it found it. And I will not navigate through folders and say, yeah, this is a OneDrive. No, the other OneDrive. And then I would just like go to documents and then I would, so this is.
But But it is important to have both. I think, Emily, you said 40 to 60% go via search, which means 40 to 6% don't. So, and I think different people work in different ways. And I think it is always important that people put both those routes in, because some people will go and, Al, you talked about finding conversation. They will go and search for that conversation via Bing. Okay, very few people will go in and search that conversation by Bing, but some of them will. But others will know where to go, and they'll navigate and remember when it was and be able to go and find it was sometime in this period and find it based on there. So you need to provide different routes into different ways for that. And I think that is one of the things that I was about to say M365 is good at, because it does provide lots of different routes. Maybe good's not quite the right word for it, but it does provide lots of options for people to be able to get in via search or navigate through to things as well.
What I would love to, sorry, you go first, Emily.
You make a good point about people going in different ways, right? Because when we're looking for content, we're looking for it in 3 different ways. I know it exists and I know where it is. I know it exists and I don't know where it is. I don't know if it exists. And depending on which of those I'm going after, I might behave differently.
And I think like Louise's one, I know it's there, but I don't know what it's called. It's that thingy thing that's in thingy.
It's that yellow thingy with that thingy in it.
With the ghost, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe that one, yes.
Yeah.
The other 2 scenarios that I always talk about with clients is when you're creating content and when you're finding content. Because finding content, yes, all 3 of those, I know it exists, I don't know it exists, I don't know where to find it. But creating content, do I know where I should put it? And putting it somewhere and making sure that you've got, minimal cognitive load to find the place to put it is really important, so that we're not kind of going, I'm just going to keep it in my OneDrive. I'm just going to keep it in this folder over here. Oh, I've forgotten where it is. I can't remember what it's called. I can't find it, so I'm going to create it somewhere else. So that's the creation and the finding are really important to separate out, because we work very differently when we're doing that as well. Very different load that we actually put on ourselves to find and create content.
And just because I identify as an information architect, I feel like I have to mention metadata at least once in this call. But to your point about
I can tell you work with Mark.
Yeah, for sure. To your point about creation, that's becoming a little bit less of a problem when we have robust information architectures and we can curate these search experiences to bring everything from all the different places into one. So we always use that example with Policy Center, right? We don't necessarily want to centralize them. HR owns one, finance owns one, IT owns one. I shouldn't have the institutional knowledge to have to know to go there. Let's bring them all into one central spot instead.
I think
it's like pay.
That leads into another session that we'll have to do, which is, the folders versus metadata. That's.
I mean, I got really big opinions.
AI solved it.
No, I'm just like I'm totally pro metadata, and I know how to make people fall in love with them. So we should record something on that.
We should do.
Yeah. Metadata madness.
You don't need it anymore. We've got Viva Topics. It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're just trying to light me up now.
So what I
would
like to see, and of course I know the activity feed and just like all the different settings of notifications kind of serve that. But what I would love to see in Teams and in Yammer is just like, so I know I got tagged and I did not respond yet, or people are still just like responding to that, and for some reason I did not get to that. I do not want to have an email that tells me, hey, please jump back into these conversations. I want to have a dashboard. Hey, these are all the conversations that you should still reply to, and sorted by priority with some kind of AI magic. I want that. I do not want folders. I do not want search. I do not want to have metadata. So yes, in the background, but I want an intelligent system that provides me with the information that I should jump on. That is what I want. And I assume
it's Viva,
that,
isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
Briefing note every day. Reminds you where you've promised something and you haven't done
conversations, I don't think.
But not for conversations.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so you
it would
know
be
those
good if they had that
emails
as well, I
like, hey, 3 days ago you promised, yes, I will follow up, and you did not do anything. So is this still a to do, or is this already done? So we know those emails. I do not want that to be an email. I want this to serve a dashboard. Maybe in Teams. Who's up to build this?
Maybe this is where Viva Insights is headed in Teams and we don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Intelligent
Sitting there with
suggestion.
MVPs going quiet and going, this is a great idea, but I can't remember what I've heard and what I haven't and what's
Yeah.
Is this still NDA?
Yeah. So just to be clear, none of us know anything that is being coming at all.
No,
like that,
no one knows
I think
anything.
there's a trajectory there. I imagine that it's easier to say than do, but maybe in 16 years' time, when Mary Jo Foley moves off to a next company, we can come back and talk about where it's moved on from since then. I think maybe we need to get another panel on information architecture. There feels like a future show, and I'm sure we can get some people who'd love to come and chat about that.
We might unearth some opinions there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
No, I think that would be a fantastic show, but I think it's probably time to start to wrap up. I know Emily's going to start getting knocks on the door with kids and adults demanding sweets. And my wife reminded me of about 10 years ago in an old house, we had a guy suddenly turn up at 10 o'clock at night and said, I don't want sweets. Can I just have some money on there? About 20 years old. And we're like, no. I've got a trick. I don't care. Go away. So yeah, we will leave you to the fun and games of Halloween night on there. A huge thank you for Emily. Really good conversation this week, and I feel we could have carried on chatting for another hour and a half, but I can hear Al's stomach rumbling already.
Thanks for having me. It was such a pleasure to join you all.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you at ASPC. We will be back. I can't remember who we've got next, but we've definitely got another guest lined up for a couple of weeks' time. So look forward to seeing everyone then. Otherwise, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.